different show for us today because we have a special guest.
Yay!
Hello! So everybody, welcome Kendria Lewis to the show.
Hi, guys.
And so tell Kendria, I mean, we know who you are. So introduce yourself to the audience, and then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what you do.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here today.
Yes.
I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I'm currently serving as the Director of Advertising from Goodwill of North Georgia.
Yes.
So I've been in the position about a month now, and prior to that, I've spent some time in the ad industry, and just really excited to be with Goodwill and doing some great things.
Yeah. Cool. So tell what does your job entail? Like, what have you been doing for the last 30 days? Tell everybody what you've been doing.
And tell Elaine, because she's probably like, I don't know what you've been doing. But
I know exactly what she's been doing. I
just trust that you come every day and do what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. No, doing a lot of listening and learning about Goodwill and the mission.
Yep.
And figuring out the best way to communicate to our audience and make sure that we're especially targeting those donors and individuals who are shoppers at our stores, and just letting them know about the great things that are happening and encouraging them to participate.
Cool. Yeah. So we have an advertising campaign coming up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so you came from D.C., so you've been in Georgia
Since June.
Since June. So what's the biggest difference for you? Like, what's the biggest adjustment you had to make coming
I'm only
to
giggling.
Let me think.
I'm only giggling because
Traffic.
Kendria and I have this in common.
traffic? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, traffic.
Did you live in the city?
I did live in the city, which made a
Okay.
big difference in D.C. because
Got
I
it.
was
So you
going
didn't
against
have-
the traffic.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then everything is really spread out in Atlanta. So in D.C., it took about 20 to 30 minutes to get most places. And here I have to allow for more time. So I'm still
a
learning
lot
that.
more time. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. But you've been getting places on time, though.
Yeah, because I'm leaving like super early.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got the hang of it. I mean, just if you stick with that, you'll be good.
Okay.
You'll be good.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
It'll happen eventually where you become like every other person in Georgia that's like, traffic. I'm late.
Yeah. It's just, it is
Traffic.
what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So so I know my answer to this question. Like, what is the biggest thing that you miss about DC?
I think it's the community. So it's just not as spread out as Atlanta. So the community and the ability to do a lot of walking to restaurants and stores and just the close-knit community, I think, is what I miss most.
Yeah. Yeah.
was
But you're newlywed. Congratulations.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm
So
a newlywed.
how's married life?
It's great. It's great.
It's just like
Oh, well, this kind of, it wasn't really what I bargained for, but no, just
this is what happens. This is what happens in the first 10 minutes of the Good Work Show. You don't know what's
talk
going to
about
happen.
anything.
Get put
Yeah.
on the spot.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning.
But you could do this. No, you probably shouldn't do the same to us because I don't know what will come back.
about that question?
I ain't got nothing to say.
Me neither. Short topic.
Nothing.
No, married life is good. It's been going through a lot of changes with the move and with the job and with marriage, but it's been a good time.
Yeah,
So
cool.
I'm enjoying it.
That's always fun. That's always fun.
Got
So,
like a built-in little partner to go do stuff with.
Right?
Yes.
Right to
Like
explore.
I want to do this. Come on.
Somebody to sit in traffic with.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's that. Now that actually would be good because half the time they could drive and then you can drive the other half and do stuff.
All the time he's driving.
So you have a
driver.
That's
Yes.
great.
Do you sit in the front seat though?
Yes,
Oh,
I
okay.
do sit in the front seat, but I prefer not to
Her
drive.
husband is not a lift. I mean,
He's not a chauffeur.
right.
You just drive.
He
Right.
just
Got
drives,
it. Got
yeah.
it. Got it. Well,
Yeah.
And I'm more of the, guide and navigator.
Oh, so you
Navigator,
navigate.
yeah.
Got it.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. So you live kind of okay. So tell everybody because this is one thing that I thought was helpful. So I drew Kendria a map of Atlanta's of the interstates. Was that helpful to
It was
you?
extremely helpful. It took me some time to kind of interpret everything. A lot of X's and scribbles
Yes.
and O's, but now it's really starting to make sense, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, see, I'm telling you, that visualization when I got
tell
it,
everybody it's like the peace sign, right? So it's the circle.
it pretty much was a peace sign, yeah. But then I put where everybody kind of lived. So
She
I
could
was like, you live over there, I live over here, we work over here. Trenise is over, like, so I did, So
we
it
had
was
some
like
stores on there.
Exactly.
The stores over here.
But I will say, when I
Yeah.
moved here, the best advice somebody told me, because I was living in Oklahoma at the time, and they were like, well, I'm like, I got to buy a house, but I don't know anything about whatever. And somebody told me, if you look at and other people, I'm sure will disagree, but whatever, the 85-75 split, and just live in the middle of that, north of the split, anywhere, you shouldn't, especially if you're coming in and you just like, I got to buy something and get back out, like that they were like, do that. And I'm like, okay. So ever since then, to your point, like you see the circle in the split, and then there was that little pizza pie, and I was like, all right, find me a house in there.
Okay. I didn't get that advice. But
I know.
it's good to know.
Yeah.
Kendria is also on the list now of everybody that I'm trying to get to move.
Yes, she
Yeah.
encourages me to move every day. I don't know if that would
you
help my
and
marriage.
You just moved
but-
here.
I know. But then we talk about stuff, and she's like, oh, I'm like, well, if you lived someplace
makes
else.
But then you don't want everybody to move to where you live, because then
I didn't say where I live. I'm just saying.
Oh.
She's
move.
just saying move.
Oh, okay.
That's her answer to all my traffic
Oh.
woes and
But
And-
there's really
but not
nowhere
even
you
like-
can really
but not your
move where there's
traffic
not.
issues, but just like, oh, I want to do that, or I want to go here, or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's over here, so you should move.
it's
There
on the
is an
list.
answer to traffic. 'Cause
Moving is more than a notion. Like that's the worst thing I could ever do. Is
It's
move.
a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. But I realized as I was talking to somebody else, I was like, you know what I've realized about everything, like all of my major life changes have required me packing up my entire life and moving.
Mm-hmm. You were telling me that.
So I'm like, it doesn't really faze me anymore to be like, oh, I have to go to Saskatchewan? All right.
I can't do it.
Yeah, it's a big
Let's
deal to
move.
me. I get attached to places
Yeah.
and comfortable, and it just seems
And that's
like
just a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. I'm not saying that it's not.
I
but,
don't want
you know.
that. I don't want that kind of. I don't want that kind of problem in my life. I have enough issues, and that is one that
You're very-
I'm the worst mover ever too. Just so you know.
How do you know? You haven't
Oh,
moved
I've been
in, like-
told.
I'm the worst packer.
I've
I
been
like
told.
I'm a bad
procrastinate,
packer.
procrastinate.
Yeah, that's-
I
Yeah.
always have
Yeah,
like
I'm
the
the bad
stuff
packer.
that I leave behind. This has happened like twice. And a friend has come over to help me at the last minute. And they were
Yep.
like, you can't leave this stuff. And I'm like, but I don't want. And it really was a matter of, it wasn't even that it was stuff I didn't want. I just did not want to pack another box.
Right,
So
right.
I was willing to forego whatever was left. I'm like, they can just have it.
I start out with these boxes that are nicely organized and labeled, but then it starts taking so long and it's so
Yes.
much stuff that at the end it's just like garbage bags.
Exactly.
Just throwing everything
well, I'm
in
a
a
good
garbage bag.
unpacker. Every time I move, I've unpacked my home within 24 hours. Like
Yeah,
when the
that's-
stuff
that's
arrives.
pretty
Now I may
good.
not have I may not have it decorated, but I have all of the boxes unpacked, broken down, and out of the house because I can't live in that kind of chaos. So I do
Impressive.
unpack
Yeah.
very.
No, I'm not doing it on the front or the back. So that's why I'm staying where I am because anybody who
Pure
comes
laziness
to, I'm
will
like,
keep me where I am.
it's not that. It's just, I think I'm done. And I'm like, oh, I only have this little bit to do. And then when people come, they're like, you haven't done anything. And I'm like, yes, I did. I was been working for 5 days and there's still more.
Right.
So I just can't, people don't want to help me move. And that's good because I will just stay right where I am.
But when was the last time you've moved?
Is 13 years ago.
Okay.
And
That's
that's people are holding on to that from that must have been
This is a traumatic experience.
Good Lord.
Repeatedly. If that happens to you repeatedly, you already know.
You have a reputation.
I have
Oh
a
my
reputation
goodness.
for being a bad mover.
bad-
But I haven't moved that many times, thank goodness. So, and back and forth from college, back and forth from my first job, and that's pretty much it. The next time I move, I need to be really rich because I'll just
need
keep that
movers.
same. No, I'm just going to leave that stuff and just buy all new stuff.
Oh,
Wow. Okay.
Like
I
just
thought you were just
going
going to
with
say
the-
that you needed
Oh,
like the
no.
movers and you need the packers, the movers, and the
I didn't want
unpackers.
I just repeat everything. So that's gonna take a lot of money. So it's
We
gonna
need
take a lot.
to,
It's
we
gonna
need to
take a
send
lot
that
to
clip to your financial advisor.
Yes,
This is your
so
goal.
that should.
This
That's
is
what-
the
that's
goal.
my goal.
This is the goal.
To
I want
move,
to
that's
move.
what I need, and there's the stipulation about what I
Well, of
live
course.
into,
Right, because
But-
you could move into a trailer and do that.
But then where's the stuff? What? Well,
That's the point. That's
yeah,
what I'm
that's-
saying.
yeah.
You
No.
need to put stipulations
Yes.
around what that looks like because knowing your financial advisor, his response would be,
His response was stay where you are. because we talked about real estate. He was like, you should stay where you're at. I was like, that's what I said.
I don't think that's good advice.
I'm telling you, he's the financial advisor.
But I don't think he gives good advice.
Well, then you should fire him as your financial advisor.
Not about finances.
Oh.
I think I think there's better life options than
You believe in moving.
No, I believe in living in civilization.
I live in civilization. I just don't live where I do stuff at. That's
Exactly.
different. But see, when I go home, there's the thing. When I go home, I don't have to worry about the stuff that I do, because that's a separator line for me. When I'm there,
I don't worry about
there's
that.
no like
people.
There's no stuff. It's just like, that's, like I said, I have a personal space line that is really, and so it's pretty big.
Who
When
else
I
are we
get
having
home.
on the show today?
We have Michelle Hodgson. She is from Children Helping Children. They had a really big event called Love Fest where they brought hundreds, I think even thousands of kids together. But Children Helping Children is exactly what it's about. Love the concept of her organization. She started it out of a really tough situation for her family and for herself, and then grew it into something that is super cool and beautiful, and getting children across Atlanta to help other children and to help them start their road to philanthropy. So it's pretty cool. So we're going to have her on the show a little bit later, bring you an interview that we did with her a couple days ago. And then we'll come back and we'll talk with Kendria a little bit more. We're going to talk about the ad campaign because we haven't talked about it a whole lot on the show yet. And so I'd love for you to tell us what you know about it so far and what your hopes are for the end result of what that campaign will do. So you're going to stick with us for a couple more segments, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about Goodwill of North Georgia and Kendria Lewis. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We are joined by Kendria Lewis, who is our new Director of Advertising for Goodwill of North Georgia. And we talked a little bit about your role in the first segment, but so as far as you know, what else are you going to be doing as the Director of Advertising besides leading our new advertising campaign, which we'll dig into a little bit more?
Well, working with other departments and the other aspects of the agency to ensure that we are getting our message out there, that people are aware of what we do and who we are, and that we are catering to our customers and donors and making sure that when they go in the stores or into the donation centers that we're meeting their needs and making it easy for them to participate in the Goodwill experience and to give back to the community.
Cool. Yeah. So what has it, we always like asking people this when they first started Goodwill and they've spent just a little bit of time with us. What is the most surprising thing that you've learned about the agency since you've been here?
The most surprising thing, I think I don't know if it's surprising, but I've been really impressed with the level of professionalism and the experience and the skill that is comprised in the staff. It makes me really excited about my job and about the opportunity to continue to learn and to grow from my team members and from other people within the agency. It's a lot going on. A lot of smart people really working hard to push the agency forward. So that's exciting to me.
Cool. Yeah. And you came from an agency. So how's the difference between what you're doing now, being on, as the client versus being in an advertising agency and the switch that you had to make, especially coming to nonprofit? Because I think a lot of people make a huge distinction when it comes to marketing and communications for nonprofits. And I always think it's actually not that different, but interested to hear your take on it.
Really, the scope of the experience is different. So on the agency side, we're really focused on advertising. There were some times when we had clients that would let us in a little bit more into what was happening with the business and their business problems, and we would kind of expand and provide more marketing solutions. But most of the time, it was really narrow focus. And at Goodwill, in my new position, I'm not just focused on advertising. I'm also meeting with other team members who are involved in PR. I'm listening and sitting in on retail meetings and learning about what's happening on the back end and production and how they're pricing items and how they're staffing people. So there's just so much more that's going on that advertising needs to know, and it's going to contribute to that overall process, but it's just, it's more expansive. And again, that's just something that I'm excited about.
Cool. Well, glad you're excited about it because there's a lot.
It is
There's
a lot.
at Goodwill. It's a really complex organization.
Yes,
It's very, and that's only, and you've only really been touching on the retail side, and not even getting into the mission side, which is which is its own odd microcosm of people and tasks and things and whatever.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah, cool. So, okay, so if there's a person out there who's working at, because I worked at an agency before I went over to nonprofit space, and I thought it was very interesting. I mean, it's different, but why would you? I would assume that you would encourage people if they were thinking about it to make the jump. I would assume that you wouldn't tell them, no, stay, don't do it. But what advice would you give to somebody if they're out there? Because, we still need people. So somebody's sitting out there at an agency someplace and they're like, well, hey, maybe I want to work for Goodwill. What would you tell them is the selling point for maybe considering making that change?
I think the selling point from changing from an agency to the client side would be just getting that more comprehensive experience and getting to see how the whole organization works and how everything works together. I think from a nonprofit perspective, it's the opportunity to be attached to something greater and to be a part of a team that's really doing something that's going to impact the community, either where you live or in our country, or just the mission. It's good. It's good to be attached to that, especially because we work so hard and we spend so much time at work, and it's just a lot of time. It's good to know that it's going towards something that I'm going to be able to walk out of my door and see is impacting people around me.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting that you said that, and talking about impacting people who you're going to be interacting with, because you're working on now one of the bigger things that we have going on for the entire year, which is a new advertising campaign. Yes. So without giving away too much, because it's not all the way complete, give us a little bit of what is going into that and what can people see and what should they be looking forward to. And then, kind of what we're hoping to get out of it.
We're really excited just to get out in the community and talk more about who we are. People know about the Goodwill, but I'm not sure they really know what we do and what our mission is. So the campaign's going to be an opportunity for us to position the Goodwill as an uplifting retailer and donation center that inspire the cycle of good. So inspiring this cycle of good is really what Goodwill is about. And that cycle of good includes donating good goods, good things, giving people the opportunity to buy those good things. And all of that works towards our mission, which is to put good people to work. So we're really going to be elevating that conversation and just making sure people know this is what we do and empowering them to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people might have seen small, teeny taste of what the campaign is moving towards, because we've had some stuff out there on billboards and whatnot. You might have seen some of the stuff. When did we start? Thrifting Day?
Back to school.
And then we had a little bit of National Thrifting Day, and we had a little bit of Halloween. So it'll be good and exciting to see what it looks like when everything is like all big and ready and pretty and fun.
Yeah, we're excited to get it out there. As you mentioned, it has kind of been trickling out through those other campaigns, but we're really looking forward to doing more of a comprehensive launch in the next couple of months. So you'll see us on outdoor, you'll see us on digital. You may be hearing our messaging in public relations or on the radio, but again, it's just an opportunity for us to tell that story and give our customers and donors and members of the community an opportunity to participate and doing what we like to say, go Goodwilling.
Yeah.
Cool.
So because we have, 3 marketing communications people on the show right now, I think
Probably
it'd be interesting.
One or two too many.
I don't know who's staying then. Like, who's got to go? We want to do that game? Like, no. Pick one. Who's got to go? But no, so.
That would be sad.
Yeah. I feel like I'd have the upper hand.
It depends.
I would never do that, though.
It depends on who's voting.
I don't
don't want to be in this.
Anyway, that is not where I was going.
Okay.
So what I was going to say was, because this show is really about, nonprofits, we feature nonprofits on the show. We feature people who are doing good. Usually, in the grand scheme of things, in the nonprofit space, there's not a ton of money, and we're not spending a ton of money to market, to do advertising. Really, the bulk of our work and what our resources go to is actually the mission, and which it should be. I mean, and we're in the nonprofit space. We exist to serve people and helping them go back to work. But I think because we are in the space that we are in what we do, I think it would be good to have a conversation about what we've seen that works when talking about marketing and advertising, communications for nonprofits, because there are so many of them who are doing really well, but there's so many opportunities to do better. And so I don't know how we, want to start or chime in, but I think one of the things, especially since before I have the position that I have now, I did PR. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for nonprofits to tell their story in a way that doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, cost to get that positive story out. This show we've provided opportunities for 300 and some odd nonprofits to come on and talk about what they do and leverage opportunities to be on the news. Or maybe it's not even on the news. Maybe it's through social media. But I think where this sort of falls off is that the nonprofits are doing the work and they're not necessarily focusing on telling the story. So that's why I love that we have the team that we have to be able to. We're not in the day-to-day of putting people to work, so we can reflect on it, versus the people who are doing it day-to-day don't always see. They can't step away from it because they're in it. And so I think that's one of the keys that I would say for nonprofits who are looking to get their message out there, is to look at having somebody on your team that is removed from the actual day-to-day, who can look at it and say, that's a really good story. Mm-hmm. And somebody needs to hear that. And then figure out a way how you do that if you have limited resources. And one of those ways is, I think, through public relations, media relations, and getting those stories to reporters. So that's what I would add to that. Interested to hear what you would add to that too, from an advertising perspective.
Yeah, I think when you're telling the story, to make sure it's authentic. So there's a lot of good messaging out there where nonprofits are using the people who are going to benefit. They're telling those stories who are going to benefit from their efforts. Mm-hmm. And that's touching, that motivates people. It educates people. So I think just really not being scared to be authentic is a great thing. And I think that resonates right now because, there are so many ads and things out there that are really polished, and we know that they're not real, and our consumers are more educated and savvy, so they can recognize that. So just not being afraid to maybe pull back on some of the high-tech equipment and technology, and just stripping things down and telling the true story. I think that's really appealing these days.
Yeah. So what about you?
I think it's picking your spots. So my background as well is PR, and I don't do so much media relations PR here for Goodwill, but in my last position at my last nonprofit, I did a lot of it. So we were always looking for the points where we knew that our message would resonate, and really taking advantage of that. So if there's something going on, so it was a disaster. It was in disaster safety. So like if something happened, like, oh, there's a flood, that's a point. Or, there's a winter storm coming, that's an opportunity. So for nonprofits, if there's something going on in the community that ties really closely to your mission, using those opportunities to be able to amplify. Because if people are already interested in what's going on because it's already newsworthy, it gives you an entry point. And a lot of times it gives the news media a different way to talk about something, because they're going to be talking about it 24 hours a day. Give them another way to talk about something that they have to continue to have conversations about.
Well, great. Well, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, probably talk a little bit more about nonprofit marketing and communications, talk to Kendria a little bit more about her role, and talk about what's going on at Goodwill. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We've been chatting with Kendria Lewis, who is our new Director of Advertising for Goodwill of North Georgia. Had a good conversation in the first segment, really just about her move. and
All about Kendria.
All
Right,
about Kendria.
right.
And she's new to Atlanta and how she's been navigating that literally. And then also about her role in the second segment, a little bit more about an upcoming advertising campaign, which we hope you will keep your eyes peeled for. We do hope you'll see it, though. So even if you're not looking for it, we still
you'll
want you to see it.
right.
Yes.
Even if we bring printouts to the show, you'll see it.
That's right.
Okay, yes. So it will be very intentional, but that'll be really cool. And I think we were on to a really good conversation that I wanted to start because we had, marketing communications folks here. And we don't normally do things that are super informative on the show unless we're talking to another guest. We don't share our personal knowledge. I think that's it. Yeah. So I think that because we each of us has a good number of years of experience behind us for marketing communication in different spaces, I think it would be great to be able to share some more of those tips and things with the audience, especially if we have other nonprofits who are listening or small businesses, because I actually think there's so much overlap between what happens in nonprofit space and what happens with small businesses that I see all the time, that the mistakes that they're making are very similar. Some of the challenges that they have are very similar, and then some of the opportunities that they have are super similar.
And their budgets are usually very
And
similar.
their budgets are usually very similar, which is small, even in some larger companies too. I think I hate to just single out, nonprofits and small businesses, because there are some larger businesses that just do not get it, and they have resources to get it, or to hire people who do, but they don't. So I think too that maybe we can continue that conversation. We were talking about some of the things that we thought were opportunities for nonprofits there. What are some of the things that you think you have seen where nonprofits are just not getting it right? Like what, or small business, or maybe even businesses in general, as you've worked in advertising, that, boy, if they could just stop doing this, it would be great. Or they could, or would propel them far past whatever goals that they needed. What hurdles should they overcome?
I think it's important to know your audience. So I think sometimes we may see organizations targeting individuals or using certain mediums that aren't going to be effective because they're not the people they need to reach, or there's a lot of waste. So one thing that's good about Goodwill is that we are putting resources behind research in order to understand who our shoppers and our donors are, who the members of the community are, so that we can make sure we're using our dollars and our efforts most effectively. And that's something that I would just recommend for other organizations. And I think if you don't have the money, there's still other things that you can do. Look at how your website, look at the metrics behind that. What are people doing on your site? How are people responding to messages that you're putting out there? Just go out and talk to your customers. That's another thing you can do if you don't have a lot of money. But I just think it's important to know who your customers are, because that can really help ensure that there's not a lot of waste and there's more effectiveness.
One thing I think is that don't assume that you don't need to do it. So I think a lot, especially, and I'm not going to say especially, but a lot of nonprofits or a lot of people, because I will say this about myself, like just personally in my personality, is I'm not necessarily a person that's going to go out there and toot my own horn. Like I'm just kind of like, well, let me put my head down and I'll do my work. And, if somebody notices, great. I just, just happy to be here. But, not really. But then you see other folks that are like really good at promoting the most minuscule of things that they do. And everybody's like, that's so great. And you're like, really? That's just what you're supposed to be doing. But okay, sure, that's great. So I think nonprofits and businesses need to realize that putting your head down and doing the work is fantastic. But you have to tell people that you're doing the work and show people how you're doing the work, and then invite those people in to participate in the process. So then that way people can, it allows you a bigger platform to do the work that you want to do. So don't just assume that just by doing the good that people will just notice or know, or somebody will be like, oh, congratulations. I think it's important to tell your stories and, show the folks this is what we're doing, and it's a big deal, and we're impacting people in a really real way.
Yeah, I think I would add to both of those things that don't get caught up in trying to make it fancy, because I think there is a lot of good work that happens in organizations and nonprofits and in businesses, and it sounds great to you because you understand what it is. You have not broken it down to the average person, and so when they hear it, they don't quite get it, and so they leave the conversation or they leave whatever interaction or the message that got delivered, and they still cannot recite what you do. And I think that we overcomplicate things sometimes, especially in nonprofits. We have a lot of jargon. We have a lot of jargon at Goodwill.
Yes.
A lot of
learning.
a lot of
Yes.
and a lot of ways that we talk about things. And to people who don't work at Goodwill or work in workforce development or work in, the thrift retail business, you don't understand what we're talking about. And
Or
so,
at some point you just accept it.
It's
It's
just
like,
that
I know
sounds
that
great.
we use these letters. I don't know what those letters mean, but I know what those letters refer to.
right. So I think that you have to find a way to make it interesting to the average person, or at least get it to a sense where they can understand it and then walk away from it. I have said, make it Barney style, because everybody can pretty much remember Barney or nursery rhymes. When I tell people about it, I'm like, everybody knows what happened to Humpty Dumpty. There's a setting. There are people in that story. You know what the climax was, and you know what the end of that story was. It is all it's like
Is that
4
the-
lines.
Like to think that there was a happy ending
Well,
somewhere.
no, I didn't say it was happy. You just know what the end of it was. So, and you can make any nursery. They're the best examples of that. And so when I tell people about how to, because people say that we really do these really big, complex things that's really kind of hard to fit in. I'm like, yeah, but the best stories are the ones that you can tell people in
Right.
2 or 3 lines, because everybody can recite it. They can remember it. So make it memorable in the sense that you have to break it down, and you don't have to give everybody every single detail. I have no idea what Humpty Dumpty was wearing when he fell off the wall and what part of his egg that cracked. However, I do know that he never
Or
got
why
put
he
together.
fell.
Or why he was even on the wall.
That's true.
Right?
Oh my God.
There's so many
Mind
questions.
blown. Like,
There's so many questions
about.
But you don't need to know that.
But that's a good point, though. But if you tell it that way,
Then you
if
can ask.
somebody's interested, they will ask you.
That's exactly right.
There
So
we
you
go.
give them just enough to get the story, walk away with it, get the information, be able to recite it if they need to. That's great. Then if they're like, hold on, I just really need to know exactly why they didn't have super glue at that time, then they can ask, you know what I mean?
Or
So-
did Humpty die?
Right. Did he?
don't
They
know.
just couldn't put him back together, and he was just out. I mean,
So
I
he
don't
was
know.
in pieces. I don't know.
Yes.
So I agree. Yes, all of that.
Yeah.
But when you said don't get fancy, I thought you were going to go someplace else.
Okay.
So my
Like,
thought was, don't feel like everything has to be so slick. So don't feel like you don't.
the authenticity that you were talking
so
about.
Don't worry about like, oh, I can't have a 4-color glossy brochure to tell my story. That's okay. I think that's one place.
You probably don't need a brochure.
Exactly.
Not these
But
days.
But
Right.
that's where I think nonprofits do have a sort of advantage, because I feel like, with corporations and businesses, you expect a certain amount of polish. Like if I go buy a Mercedes, I want the nice glossy book and it feels substantial and it's heavy and it's got all the stuff. But if I go to a nonprofit and I ask to see your annual report, I might be okay with some paper stapled at the corner. Don't make perfect the enemy of good. Like, you can tell your story, you can do your work, you can do the stuff. Don't get tripped up on, if I can't have the Rolls Royce, then we just won't do it. It's
That
like
doesn't mean you should have clip art, though.
you should not. Nobody should ever have clip art.
There are tools. So we should
There
do
are
that in the
tools.
last couple
Yes.
of minutes. We should run down some really simple tools that people can use and just do like a quick fire, because I do think that, yes, you have a great point there. But I also think that sometimes it's used as a crutch that you can't
Never
advance
use
and make
clip
it
art.
look great. And that is one thing,
No.
one area where we're not saying don't make it look great.
No.
You just don't have to spend a ton of money on doing it. So top 2 or 3 tools, shoot?
Canva.
Okay, Canva.
I will say canva.com is a fantastic tool. There's a ton of free elements. You can upgrade a little bit for a little bit of money a month, but what it gives you a starting point for everything. Social media, flyers, newsletters, annual reports, presentations. It has a ton of fonts. It has a ton of photography, so you aren't using clip art. It has layouts and design so that you can start something from a place, and it's all totally click and point. Yeah, click and point, point and click. That's what it is. Point and click. You don't need a graphic design degree to do any of it, and it's a fantastic resource for people that want to do stuff like that without paying for like a Photoshop or InDesign or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Great. Not clip art.
Yeah.
But icons and some imagery noun project I really love and enjoy using, especially when putting together presentations or certain decks. And then also Typeform. I talked a little bit about research. Typeform is an easy platform that you can use to easily survey folks. So whether it's internally or with your customers, it's really easy setup and administration, and then it provides excellent reporting.
Yeah.
Google Analytics is another one.
Yep.
So Kendria talked about what is your website doing? What are the things that you're putting out there? How are they responding? And that's a great free tool that'll tell you that information and it'll give you rich information about how people are using your stuff.
Yeah. I was just going to say, use the resources that you already have. Google,
Yes.
the dictionary, the thesaurus. I mean,
Grammarly.
Grammarly.
Yeah, Grammarly's great.
Grammarly.
People think that you really have to have money and you got to go subscribe. YouTube is the best place to find out how to do anything because somebody has already done it and they will tell you how to do it. So
True.
if you know nothing else about even how to work Canva, you can go on YouTube and find out how to work it. Anyway,
Yes.
we're out of time. We're going to come back and bring you Children Helping Children. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, Kendria, for stopping by the show.
Thank you, guys.
You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We are excited because we are talking to Michelle Hodgson, and she is the founder and executive director of Children Helping Children. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, love the name of your organization. Tell us all about it and the mission.
So we basically educate and empower youth philanthropists. We give them a platform to shine their light and give back to nonprofits here in Atlanta. That's the mission.
Great. So, we love when I always say this. I feel like this is always my setup question. So I love when we have a founder on the show that can tell us a little bit about why you started the organization. So give us a little bit of that story.
So over a decade ago, I had a little boy, and his name was Cole Clayton Hodgson, monogram CHC. He actually passed away as a baby. And on what would have been his first birthday, we had a birthday party for him. And it started at my house, and it grew from there. So it was friends and family, and now it's the whole city of Atlanta. Yeah.
Wow. So tell us what's so important, because you're getting children into philanthropy and kids like to give stuff away. I mean, just in general, you have little kids and they gave away their jacket to their best friend. I mean,
Right,
so they're
right.
In general, kids are pretty giving. But how do you get them into philanthropy? Because that sounds big for little ones, but it's part of kind of what they're baked in, kind of doing anyway, right?
It's so true, and I think that we just have to protect it. So they come out kind of knowing how to love, how to give, and it's really like anything else, like soccer or math. It needs to be a practice, and it needs to be ongoing because you'll lose it if you get older. And so it's important for us, depending on their age, to fit them in a situation that's age appropriate. So when they're little, like at our festival, they come and assemble things. And then as they get older, they become sort of the educators and the ones that are asking questions about the nonprofits that are around. So we try to build a curriculum that's developmentally appropriate for where they are, but so that they can dip into service and then hopefully become adults that always give back.
Yeah. So if you start early, it's kind of like one of those things. You start early, then you continue on, giving. And if you've supported a cause, an organization as a child, you probably remember it. I mean, we hear that all the time for people who donate to Goodwill. They say, "Oh, I remember when my parents gave, and so now I donate."
Exactly. And also for us, the secret sauce is to have the teenagers be the teachers because all our little ones think they're so cool.
Yeah.
And so really anything that they do, they want to do. And so, we've been trying to coin the kindness is the new cool for over a decade, and it's really sticking. It's cool to be kind.
Nice.
Cool. So talk to us about this curriculum, because I think it's interesting that you're looking at it as something that you have to learn and practice and know how to do. So talk to us a little bit about how that works and what the kids are getting as a part of that.
So my degree is in education and psychology, and I was lucky enough to have that background when I wrote it. I try to make it really sensorial and go across all subject areas. And it's really hard, especially when we do work in schools, to fit it in the day because it's so jam-packed. So depending on the school and what we need, we integrate kindness in any subject area. And the more hands-on, the more concrete, the more the kids remember it. So we do a lot of assembling and drawing and art. And really it's based on just values and principles and going into the socio-emotional kind of feelings and, walking in other people's shoes. And we pair it a lot. There's a lot of great children's books and literature out there that we pair for our compassion curriculum.
Yeah. Cool. So tell us about, because you work with a lot of kids, and what's the impact on the children? Maybe share a success story or two about a little one or even a teen who is kind of teaching the curriculum. What are they getting out of it? What are they saying back to you? And what are their parents saying, after they come home? I'm sure there's, there's some impact there. Maybe they're sharing with their parents about what they did for the day.
Yeah. Every year, we are just humbled by what happens with these kids, and we learn so much from them. We've been doing this now for over a decade, so we really get to track. One I can think of off the top of my head is Katie Gerald, who was born and has type 1 diabetes, and she started with us as a 3-year-old at our very first Be Well Bear project at my house when we first started it. And now she's on the junior board of directors. And I remember when she was little, in fact, I posted on social media the other day, this little shy picture of her just kind of hugging her mom. And to see her now just as this educator about diabetes and how little ones that are being diagnosed and understanding insulin shots and what to do with patches and have you, it's a place for her to kind of really heal what she went through and educate little ones that it's okay. And I've been through this before. And so I see her personally go from this little shy kid to out of all the junior boards this year, she's the most enthusiastic and the most vocal. So it really is a platform to heal and a platform to be a leader as well.
Nice.
That's awesome. So talk to us a little bit about how people connect with you. So if a person's out there listening and they're like, oh, this sounds like something that, I've got a toddler. It seems like kids are starting to do things younger and younger. Now it's like you have swim lessons when you're 18 months. So so the next step, philanthropy. So how do they, how do parents connect their kids to what you're doing?
Well, there's kind of a joke about that, especially, like I said, the kids that have been around for a decade. If they were infants and they were at the first one, they're like, I've been a philanthropist since the time I'm a baby. But the truth is we don't really know in the brain when things click and when you learn. So in my opinion, it's important very early on to expose them to the experience. And then at different ages, it will click and be more meaningful depending on their own circumstances, or maybe just the event triggered something really exciting for them. But we have a festival where we engage families, and that's a really good entry point, because it's just fun. There's jump houses and there's cotton candy and a stage and all kinds of that's the give back, have fun part. So there's have fun and give back. And then we have our curriculum that we go through schools, and we have a wellness center at King Powell Arts Center. So I just think, looking at our website and looking around at what we have and what we offer, and we get lots of sort of emails from the website that say, I have a 5-year-old, daughter that wants to have a birthday party, and then we'll customize a birthday party for her. So we try to make it custom and engage the kids where they are.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that sounds really interesting.
In fact, my twins just turned 8, and as their mom, it's a little different than when you're telling somebody else's kids. And I had to do this we have so many toys, and what do you think about instead of getting toys for your birthday, if we take donations and you can pick your nonprofits? And they've been doing this since they remember, so they knew exactly they wanted to pick the Mission, Gigi's Playhouse, and Families First. And so basically all the kids donated instead of buying them gifts, and they assembled our Be Well Bears, and we donated to the 3 nonprofits. And then their dad and I gave them a little gift certificate to go to Target and stuff. But they were really pumped up about it, and they knew because of their birthday that all these bears were going to be going to kids. Then they got to deliver it too, and that's the piece that's really important, because even in schools when we have philanthropic projects, sometimes it goes to places and we have no idea where it goes. So for these kids to make that contact and see this really is another kid right down the street from me that doesn't have food, that doesn't have clothes. It's really meaningful. And we just try to bridge the gap. And again, it's not this one group of kids giving to another, because each child gets something out of it. Oftentimes when you have a lot, you don't have perspective and gratitude. So we find that CHC is like an infinity sign, where it's giving, receiving, because everybody gets something out of it.
That's fantastic. So Michelle, tell us about how you, I mean, this is a decade ago when you founded this organization, and now you have, you know, kids across Atlanta, you know, you have young kids and you have teens, and, you know, and this was sort of born out of something that was really kind of heartbreaking for you and your family. But tell us how it makes you feel now to see where it's grown, and so many young people who are now turning into philanthropists and giving back, you know, kind of what you had in your heart, but now you're able to share with others.
Thanks for asking that question, because we often say, you know, Cole was just a baby, so we didn't know him as a little boy or a teenager, but he had this presence about him and this light. And we use the word light a lot in our nonprofit, because we hope that his light ignites everyone else's light, like a candle that just continues to pass the flame along. And so we feel like because of his existence and all the people that are behind us, it's just kind of a brighter city because of him. And we also know that the kids that are struggling, that we go to help, have their own light and their own voice. And we try to give them a chance also to be philanthropic, so that they can take whatever situation they went through, like we did, and make their life meaningful. So that light just kind of ripples and ripples and ripples. And it's I'm humbled by it all the time. I still just kind of scratch my head and go, this isn't just a birthday party with my friends. These are people that don't know me and our family. And it's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how can people support? So I bet the bears and the things that you're giving back, I mean, there's probably lots of things that people might be able to support and help out. Donations, volunteers, tell us all about it. Yeah.
Yes, all of it. We need it all. It's everything we have. All the information is on our website, but certainly we do need funds to keep going. We need to purchase the materials, volunteering, hands-on, all of that kind of stuff. And really, again, regardless of your background, and even if it's not CHC, people should be working in the nonprofit sector. These nonprofits go out of business typically in less than 5 years, because it's like, I say all the time, it's like having a job and then you have to have a second job to pay for your job. So there's all that sort of balancing. And even if you don't have money to support, which you have hands. And so it's really important to engage in nonprofits, and we do need the support in all kinds of ways. So
yeah. Well, you can say that one more time. Support your nonprofits. Yeah, that's what we're here for. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the basis of our show. I mean, we give a voice to nonprofits, and you know, and those that might not get the opportunity to share the stories, like you, you know, and so we're so glad that we stumbled upon, you know, children helping children, because otherwise, you know, people may not know. We want them to know the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much. And these kinds of platforms are so phenomenal. I mean, for people to connect what we do and how to do it and where to go and make it super easy is so important. So we do appreciate you guys giving us this platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got about a minute left. What's upcoming for the organization? What do you have coming up next?
Well, we've got next year we're going to be applying we need applicants for the junior board. So Love Fest 2020 will be in October. So if you have kids between the ages of 12 and 16, shortly on our website, there will be a place to apply for the junior board. And this is a really cool group of kids. We get hundreds of applicants, and it's a diverse group of kids from all over Atlanta. They pick nonprofits that they want to help, and at the festival, we help those nonprofits. So if you got a teenager applying is a good thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And give us your website real quick.
www.chcatlanta.org.
Cool.
All right. Well, Michelle, it's been a pleasure. You know, we thank you for coming on the show, but then also just for creating a nonprofit. Like you said, there's a lot of businesses that go out. I mean, a business. I mean, let's just be honest. Restaurants are here to get and gone tomorrow, especially in Atlanta. But for nonprofits, and for you to stay the course and do something that's so meaningful and that's going to help so many others. So we just appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're listening to The Good Work Show.